All right, guys, it is time for our weekly partnership segment with The Lever. And joining us to discuss his latest reporting is a journalist for that outlet, Andrew Perez. Great to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
So your partner in crime there, David Sirota, kind of got into it with some folks at the Washington Post over Jeff Bezos' ownership. It all started, in my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, when Bezos tweeted something, he quote tweeted a Joe Biden quote. Biden had tweeted, "You want to bring down inflation, let's make sure the wealthiest corporations pay their fair share." Bezos's take was the newly created disinformation board should review this tweet, or maybe they need to form a new non sequitur board instead. Raising corporate taxes is fine to discuss. Taming inflation is critical to discuss. Mushing them together is just misdirection. So this is Bezos weighing in on Twitter with his public policy views. What happened from there, Andrew?
Sure. David also got into it with with the Washington Post columnist who Bezos shared her recent column, basically downplaying the idea that corporate profiteering is responsible in any way for inflation and slamming Democrats for doing so. And David said, these two things combined kind of just show you that, Bezos is showing his editorial team what he wants right here. Some of them are, really kind of following through already, and it was not taken kindly.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's talk a little bit about this because I remember back when Bernie Sanders suggested that perhaps the Washington Post economic coverage might be influenced by the ownership, and there was this whole meltdown. Oh my God, how could you suggest such a thing? That's so crazy. But when it's a billionaire whose ideology liberals are less comfortable with, Elon Musk, they see very clearly that there's a problem with him having ownership of Twitter, which, in some ways is a publishing platform on its own, and him, putting out there to the world what his views are and how that can lead to a stifling effect and a problem with free speech and ability to cover the news properly. So why has there been such a blind spot here when it comes to Bezos, oftentimes the richest man on the planet, owning one of our foremost journalistic institutions in this country?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the Washington Post brand. It is a highly reputable paper, and no one would question that. But I think the truth is we really have no way of knowing what the editorial process there looks like, or what kind of influence that Bezos has. I think what we know is that Bezos has been pretty upfront about why he bought the Post. He wanted a newspaper in the capital city, in the most important country of the world. That's what he said a few years ago. But the truth is, we do kind of know generally that that media owners, where their influence is felt, and if it is at all, is in the opinion section. We learned that with Mike Bloomberg's 2020 presidential run. We all got to learn that that the opinion section of Bloomberg had long represented his views. But I think on a general level, obviously, media ownership does have some influence here, right? And it's probably mostly felt in who's hired, right? The people that are hired at these outlets are brought there for a reason. It's because they share views that that the company does itself. And if there ever was any kind of question about whether Bezos is kind of injecting his ideological preferences into the news, it would probably happen with him posting on Twitter exactly what his preferences are. Basically saying that that it's wrong for Democrats to focus on corporate profiteering, and touting his one of his columnists who's been doing just that.
Yeah. So this columnist happens to back his view that, nothing to see here on corporate profiteering and inflation. And he elevates her, and that's a sort of reward in and of itself. She's getting affirmation that the guy who runs the joint loves what you're doing. So, of course, that's going to continue not only encourage her in that same direction, but encourage other columnists who also want this sort of praise showered on them from Jeff Bezos to continue in that direction as well. Speak to the substance here, because there has been this sort of organized effort to erase the impact of corporate profiteering on inflation. And I don't think that anyone is saying that's the only story of what's going on here when we're coming out of a pandemic and you have supply chain issues, you have new lockdowns in China, you have the war in Ukraine. Certainly there are a lot of factors going on here. But when you look at the numbers, there's just no doubt that especially companies that have monopoly pricing power are using inflation as an excuse to further raise their prices. Some of these CEOs are outright admitting it on their investor calls. So speak to the substance here of the issue that she and Bezos are trying to say, no, 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 that's not the problem at all.
Yeah. So the Economic Policy Institute did a study on this just a few weeks ago, and the data that they produced has just been completely ignored by all the kind of pundits weighing in here, from Catherine Rampell at the Washington Post to Matt Iglesias, as well as economists like Larry Summers and Jason Furman. What the Economic Policy Institute found was that more than half of the price increases that Americans are seeing right now can be attributed to larger corporate profit margins. And there was actually a Boston Federal Reserve analysis that was released a few days ago, where they found that corporate concentration could be amplifying the inflation that we're seeing right now. There's also been just a few days ago, there was a report in More Perfect Union about how Tyson Foods had actually put together an investor presentation showing that they'd experienced $1.5 billion in higher costs over the last quarter, and that they'd raised prices in a corresponding move by $2 billion, which means that consumers were just feeling another $500 million in costs. And they were able to do that because they are one of 4 giant meatpacking firms, right? And that's an industry that has been targeted by the Biden administration, or at least has been a focus of theirs. So there definitely is some pressure right now, or some of the inflation that we're feeling right now is certainly due to corporate profits, and saying that, scoffing at that idea is just completely insane.
Yeah, but if you write that column about how corporate profits are contributing, you know for sure you're not going to get retweeted by Jeff Bezos. So there's less incentive in that direction to expose that part of the problem. Andrew Perez, thank you so much, as always, for your great reporting.
Thank you.
Yeah, our pleasure. And thank you guys so much for watching. We'll have more for you later. Cable news is ripping us apart, but the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.